to the confidentiality and legal rights afforded by the state of New Jersey, members of the public are asked to not speak negatively or in a derogatory manner about any employee of the board or student. Please be advised that all or portion of this meeting is being live streamed in real time and will be recorded for rebroadcasting at a future date. Roll call.
Mr. Fallon.
Here.
Mr. Garvin.
Here.
Mrs. Milano.
Here.
Mr. Vaccaro is absent. Mr. Biamonte.
Present.
Mr. Nieves.
Present. Thank you, trustees. Tonight is a short agenda, and we are going to work our way right into the presentation of 25-26 school year budget by Mr. Lisa, our business administrator, Mr. Albro, our superintendent.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to present to you our 2025-2000 school year budget. First, I'd like to thank our Board of Education for their continued support all through my first year here, and especially for their support during the budget creation process. And of course, a big thank you to Mr. Albro for all his tremendous support along the line as well. First, I'd like to give a little bit of background on our district so that we may understand how the budget has come to be. As you know, we're a relatively small district with just 3 schools: the Catherine E. Doyle School, grades K to 3, the Woodridge Intermediate School, grades 4 to 6, and the Woodridge Junior Senior High School, grades 7 through 12. The intermediate school has just celebrated its 10th anniversary, and I had the pleasure of serving as principal in that school for a little over 8 years. When it opened up at the time, it was to solve Woodridge's growing student population, but as we know, the population did not stop growing. Currently at the Doyle School, we have an enrollment of 400, it doesn't work that well, that's fine. We have an enrollment of 475 students. At the intermediate school, 253 students. At the high school, 544 students. And including out-of-district students, we have a current enrollment, it stands at 1,325 students. Looking ahead to next year, incorporating our pre-K back into the Doyle School and shifting in our 4th grade from the intermediate school, we're looking at the following changes in enrollments. As you can see, we're projecting 663 students at the Doyle School, a reduction down to 185 students at the intermediate school, and a small decrease at the high school down to 532 students. Total enrollment, including out-of-district students, is 1,420. Looking at all together over the past 10 years, from the 2015-2016 school year through the current school year, we have seen a very modest growth of 5%. But with the inclusion of the pre-K program at Doyle next year, as well as the significant increases in the lower elementary grade level enrollments, we're looking at a projected 7.3% growth from this year to next year. Although we've seen overall growth in our enrollment, the growth has not been evenly distributed throughout our 3 schools, as can be seen on the next slide. We'll be looking at significant growth at the Doyle School, and although the intermediate school will only house approximately 185 students next year, the larger grade level enrollments in Doyle will be rippling through the other 2 schools in the years to come. With only 12 full-size classrooms at intermediate, 4 classrooms per grade level will no longer be sufficient to meet the needs of our students, necessitating the shift of 4th grade down to Doyle. These increases obviously point to what we all know is to come in September, which is our Doyle School expansion. The Doyle School expansion will be ready to open come September 2025, and we'll have enough capacity to meet the needs of our students for years to come. However, with increased classrooms, we have the challenge of filling those classrooms with future Woodridge staff. More classrooms equals more staff, and this is what we are looking at in terms of projections for next year. We are going to be hiring 6 preschool teachers for a total number of sections of 6, hiring 1 additional kindergartner teacher bringing the number of sections up to 6. 2 additional first grade teachers, again, bringing it up to 6 sections. 1 additional grade 2 teacher, bringing that up to 6 sections. 1 additional grade 4 teacher, bringing that to 5 sections. 2 additional grade 6 teachers, bringing that up to 5 sections. Also note in the years to come that grades 4, 5, and 6 will likely require 6 sections as well. With a total of 12 sections in grades 5 and 6, the intermediate school will then fully serve its purpose with all full-size classrooms in use. Continuing on down the line, pausing for technical difficulties. Continuing on down the line, we intend to hire 1 world language teacher, which will be servicing both WRS and Doyle, 2 special education teachers, 1 ML multilingual or otherwise known as ESL teacher, which will provide service for pre-K, 1 speech pathologist, 1 additional guidance counselor so that there will be a dedicated guidance counselor at both the Doyle school and the intermediate school, 1 additional child study team member to serve all of our additional students. And of course, the building is going to be much larger Doyle, a lot more space and a lot more students, so we're going to need additional custodians to properly serve that building. More staff requires significantly more revenue. Above, I present to you our projected revenues for the 25-26 school year. Our local tax levy at the top proposed to be $23,253,353. That again is money obtained directly from the taxpayer through property taxes. The next line, total state revenue, which is money awarded by the state based upon their proprietary formulas, which takes into account our needs, which we project at $2,495,352. Fund balance at $500,000. This is money that is anticipated to be left over at school year's end, the 24-25 school year, that may be used to help supplement our 25-26 school year budget. Miscellaneous revenue at $1,392,727. That's money classified as miscellaneous revenue, is money that is derived from multiple sources and has been categorized together. A transfer from maintenance reserve at $303,760. That is money that was left over funds from prior school years that may be used for purposes of maintenance related to tasks and will be transferred over to our 25-26 school year budget in order to fulfill this task. Tuition at $2,285,585. This is monies collected from Moonachie for their high school age students, as well as monies collected as part of our before and after care programs. Debt service at $1,040,850. This is money collected as part of the property tax levy designated specifically to pay down our debt on previous referendums. Although this amount is indicated at $1,040,850, I'm happy to report that this full amount will not be collected from the taxpayer, as $600,000 of this money will be paid through a transfer of funds from a prior referendum in order to pay down our debt service. This is a significant savings to our taxpayers. Additionally, I would like to mention that one of our bonds will have been fully paid off this coming school year. This will no longer be a cost to our district moving forward, providing for additional taxpayer-related savings as well. Federal and state grants at $450,092. This is money provided as grants from the state and federal government. For example, Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV related grants are included in that amount. And adding all these up, our total revenue for the 25-26 school year comes out to $31,719,681. Let's expand upon this a little further on focusing on some of the most significant areas, the tax levy. So our total local tax levy comes out to $23,253,315, as we said. This amount consists of a 2% increase from the 24-25 school year. As many of you know, a number of years ago, the state government placed a cap of 2% that schools may increase their property tax levy by. There is no requirement to implement this full 2%. However, as we have discussed, our growth has necessitated an increased number of staff. The cost to hire this staff is significant, and 2% is not sufficient to meet those needs. Even the state, and all of its wisdom with regards to implementation of the cap, knew this. As a result, they have allowed for situations where this 2% would be allowed to be surpassed, providing for an adjustment. There are two areas indicated above that allow for adjustments involving healthcare, the first one, and enrollment involving the second one. Woodridge has qualified for both of these adjustments in those amounts indicated. Adding together the 2% plus the healthcare adjustment plus the enrollment adjustment gets us to a grand total. It gets us to a subtotal. It's not indicated up there of 24 million. I'm sorry, that number is incorrect. Gets us, add up the 2% cap plus those two numbers. I don't have that total in front of me. I'm sure you can figure that out real quick. I'm sorry I didn't write that down, but having submitted our tentative budget with that number for this amount back in mid-March, we later received a letter from the state informing us that even with these adjustments, that our tax levy spending was below adequacy by over $3 million. 8 such districts in Bergen County fell below this level, and we were given the opportunity to apply for the ability to increase the property taxes to help meet those adequacy levels. We held a meeting early in April to address this application. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but at that meeting, Mr. Albro spoke in detail about the submission of this application and its necessity in order for us to meet our obligations to our students. At this time, we have been informed that our application was successfully submitted and is under review. We eagerly await the result of this application. As a result, you will see on our agenda several instances where our final budget is indicated as pending NJDOE approval. That approval is for the additional monies as a result of this application. If awarded, an additional $1,142,857, the number on the bottom there, will be added to our tax levy, with a bonus of the state awarding us another $57,143 to round out our application to $1.3 million, which brings our grand total to the number on the top, that $23,253,315. Providing for further information on one of our major sources of revenue, what you're looking at above is our trend of state aid over the last 3 years, which I'm happy to report has increased overall from year to year. If you look at the blue bar, categorical transportation, steady in 23-24 and 24-25, and we see an increase in 25-26. Extraordinary, I'm going to skip over that for just a moment, and I'll come back to that. Categorical special education in yellow, you're going to see increases from year to year to year. We're in 25-26. We're now up to $1,427,265. Equalization aid in green, you'll see $79,500 in both 23-24 as well as 24-25. You see zero in 25-26. That is because it has been eliminated across the state, so nobody is actually receiving that anymore. And if we go over to categorical security aid, that is in orange, we see a pretty significant increase moving from 23-24 to 24-25, and then over to 25-26 to where we are at $213,649. The bottom blue bar, light blue bar, total state aid, which we can see an increase from year to year to year. Our final figure in 25-26 of $2,438,209. Now I want to go back to the red extraordinary aid. I skipped over that for a moment. The aid numbers, the categorical transportation, special ed, equalization, security, those are all known amounts. They've been communicated to us. We have included those in the budget. There's no variables there. We understand that. However, extraordinary aid is a projection. We did, in fact, receive $635,714 in 23-24. We are projecting in 25-26 that we will receive that same amount of aid. But the reality is we still do not know from the state what our 24-25 award will be. So we're being a little bit more conservative in 25-26 and projecting the same number that we got back in 23-24. Regardless, our total aid, state aid, you can see has gone up from year to year to year. Looking at our budget as a whole and where the percentages of it derive from, one can easily see that the bulk of our funding comes from the local tax levy. Thus, without those adjustments that we mentioned and without the additional state aid application, we would not be able to fund our schools. Those are necessary. We're going to move off of revenue now and go into expenses. We've discussed our revenue thus far, but I want to mention some major cost factors in terms of our expenses before we get into the actual numbers. Up there, I have some categories that are rather significant categories in terms of expenses, but I wanted to point out the projected increases that we're anticipating. So if you look at salaries, generally we could say with certainty that our salaries are going to increase by 3% to next year. That's because it's built into our contract. However, as mentioned earlier, we are looking to hire up to potentially 22 new staff members. All those staff members will be receiving salaries, obviously, that are not already part of the current baseline salary. So this 3% is going to be increasing by a much larger amount. You're going to be adding to that at least, we're projecting 1.65 million to those salaries. Benefits is similar in that we were informed by our benefits providers that we should be anticipating an 18% increase in health benefits costs. That's a rather significant figure, but we also have to add into account that those additional staff members are going to require benefits as well. So we're projecting another $515,000 added onto that. Tuition for out of our district students varies considerably, but in general, we're preparing for a 5% increase. Transportation costs have increased in double digits over the last several years with a shortage of bus drivers, but those increases appear to be leveling off, so we're preparing for a smaller 5% increase. Insurance, our insurance companies have informed us to prepare for a 15% increase in our premiums. This is insurance for the school, separate from health benefits insurance from our staff. Utilities, estimates for increases from our utility providers are looking to be around 15%. I show you all those percentages because it becomes obvious that with all of these percentage increases, there is no possibility that a capped 2% increase in revenue can possibly support our rising expenses. Jumped. Okay. So since we have such large expenses, I just want to talk a little bit about how we are trying to save money and keep those expenses in check. Pointing to some of the items I put up here, and there's obviously others, but we're a member of South Bergen Joint Commission. That's a public services commission which allows for pooling of support services costs such as speech, occupational therapy, transportation. Without their assistance, these costs could be much greater. We're a member of ACES, that is the Alliance for Competitive Energy Services. We saw in the previous slide the projections for utility cost increases. I believe it was 15%. By pooling together multiple districts, we get the cost advantage of buying our utility services in bulk, thereby obtaining much better rates than we would otherwise. We're a member of several JIFs, or joint insurance funds. Again, we gain the advantage of bulk purchase of insurance with our neighboring districts, saving us considerable monies. We work with the borough of Woodridge considerably, sharing equipment and expenses on such things as phone service, network connectivity, landscaping, snow removal, security, etc. We take advantage of educational data services, a cooperative procurement management program that, again, leverages collective bargaining power to reduce costs. Taking that into account with common sense measures of seeking out the best price and obtaining multiple quotes on purchases, we do our very best to save money whenever and wherever possible. In terms of our overall expected expenses for the school year, we point you to the above. We see our 2024-2025 budget in the first column versus our 25-26 budget, projected budget, along with the accompanying dollar change and the percentage change as well, all the way to the right. Working down the line, we have direct student services. These are expenses that pertain directly to the services to our students. We can see an increase and that's likely going to be due to additional classrooms and teachers, as we've spoken about, that are going to be considerable costs to us in the Doyle School. Administrative costs. This has to do with administrative salaries, secretarial salaries, associated costs of supporting these areas. We see a decrease here due mostly from over budgeting from the prior year and also some streamlining and boosting efficiency this coming year. Plant costs. These are maintenance-related salaries and costs. We see an increase due to additional custodians and supplies to service the physically increased size of Doyle School, along with its population. Employee benefits. We see a significant increase in employee benefits due to the projected 18% increase in overall cost of health insurance, in addition to required health care for new staff. Employee benefits also is not just health benefits. There are pension payments in there, dental benefits, and several other items in there as well. The next item, state and federal projects. There was a modest increase in this area as these increases are driven by state and federal revenue coming in, which has increased as well. Debt service, there is a small decrease in the interest payment, as would be expected on any loan from year to year. But note that much of this amount is being paid with surplus money from a previous referendum. So this is actually a significant cost savings to our taxpayers in the amount of $600,000. Finally, we see a modest increase in capital expenditures, very much in line with prior years. Looking at our budget as a whole and where the percentage of our expenses derive from, one can easily see that the bulk of our expenses go directly to support our students at 62.9%. The big question in all these budget meetings for the public when it comes down to is, well, how is this going to affect me? What does this do for my taxes? How will this budget impact my taxes? Putting all this together, the school tax levy for the 2025-2026 school year will increase $236. That's an average, that's $19.67 per month on the average home value of $542,692. At this time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Mr. Albro. Did you want to comment a little further on this?
Yes, can you go back to the slide?
Sure. Which one?
The listed of increases.
Good evening. First off, I want to thank and congratulate Mr. Lisa. This is his first budget. He was very thorough. The state threw us some curveballs in the process, but he did a fantastic job. And I also want to personally thank you, Mr. Lisa. I want to comment on the additional staffing because within what you see projections on the board, there are other benefits as well. When you see sections being added to certain grade levels outside of pre-K, which is a new program, obviously, we're able to make ourselves whole again. If you recall the budget process last year, the district had to cut some positions and reassign some staff to cover other needs. So by bringing these classroom teachers into each section, we're now able to restore basic skills reading in the Doyle School, basic skills reading and math to serve both Doyle and in the intermediate school by taking that action. Additionally, 2 more special education teachers. The board's desire has been to make sure that we exhaust every opportunity to ensure that our students can attend school in their district and not have to go out of district if it could be avoided. Over the course of the last few years, the district's been very successful in adding new self-contained classrooms to meet the needs of our students and not have to send them out of district. Next year, the high school will open its first self-contained classroom, and we're going to open an additional self-contained at the Doyle School. Obviously, as Mr. Lisa said, multilingual, if we're going to add our pre-K students, that's when we're going to find out which of our students need those types of services. Last year, unfortunately, we had to cut a member of the child study team. We're restoring that in this budget, in addition to adding another speech pathologist to assist with pre-K as well as with the caseload. In terms of school counselors, currently, we have 1 staff member shared at Doyle and the intermediate school. We have 1 staff member shared at the intermediate school and the high school, and we have 2 full-time counselors at the high school. This budget will allow us to add a guidance counselor so that there's 1 person all day, every day at Doyle School, 1 person all day, every day at the intermediate school, and 3 people on the guidance counseling staff at the high school. That's a win for us. And obviously, you're adding to the footprint of the Doyle School, 2 floors, gymnasium, library, music room, et cetera. So we are going to be needing an additional 2 custodians. And as Mr. Lisa mentioned in his presentation, as I mentioned when we had our special meeting prior to this, the state has assessed that we are $3.8 million below adequacy. And when they measure adequacy, they're saying we're $3.8 million away from what they believe to be having the ability to have an efficient education system. Tonight, the budget is going to help fill that hole a little bit and help us to do more for our students. And having been here for a long time, I'm pleased that we're able to do this tonight. I thank the board. I thank the support of the community. And I'm looking forward to continued growth in the future. Thank you.
All right, I will open it up to the hearing of citizens on the resolution. Basically, our budget. Any questions?
Do we know what percent out of all residents in
I'm sorry, Jimmy, name and address.
James Forshey, 147 10th Street, Woodridge. Given our current population, what percentage of residents currently have students in our school system? Does anybody, I mean, is that something we could ascertain at some point in time, knowing what our base is for taxation? I mean, because I know a common complaint in a lot of areas are residents who don't have people, who don't have children in school complain, my taxes go to paying schools and I'm getting nothing from it.
And I think that's true of many towns, you know, but we could find out for you.
But I think the idea of if we can determine that we have a given percentage, we'll call it 60% of students, residents have students, that makes the idea of passing that along, that the expenses, both this year and following on, to residents a lot more palatable, because we can show you what you're getting for your tax dollars. And then it may be something we can discuss with the city council, as opposed to just coming up with, okay, this is the figure that will meet this year's budget. We can possibly extrapolate a couple of years down the road and say, look, let's see if we can pass a referendum through the town, if we know that we have a certain percentage of residents with students, that every year we're looking to increase our taxes by an X number. And we're going to do this for the next 5 years because we can anticipate additional expenses that will no longer be a surprise to taxpayers. So it'll be, hey, look, city council, let's tell them that we want another $225 or $250 per year per person in town, because there's such a large percentage of people who live here that have kids in the school system. And it allows us to anticipate without having to catch up. It rolls it up ahead, and you guys will have an idea of what your additional income will be year after year after year, as opposed to having to catch the number.
I think one of the issues with that is, as I mentioned, the 2% cap. You know, we're fortunate in this case that there were those 2 adjustments that were available to us in addition to the application. Otherwise, if that wasn't available to us, there really is no like catch-up payment. We can only go to the max 2% cap.
But if it's given to the residents as an option, we'll vote in a referendum to say that we're allowing property tax increase above that 2%, because we understand that there's a use for it and we want to contribute to the school system going forward. Is that something the state allows us to do?
We can ask a question at election time to increase. There is the referendum route. There are some others, but it's not as easy as just going out to the public. So we'd actually have to file for that, have approval, ask the question at election time. Referendum is another way to do that. I agree, there are different ways to do that, but it's not as easy as just saying we all agree as a community, let's go ahead and increase our taxes. But I mean, I think all your other points well said. It has been some things that we've entertained, especially with opening up the new building. I would also say that, being underfunded and what happened this year, we actually have no indication, but hoping it's something that we could do again next year as well.
I mean, it may be something at some point in time we discuss with the city council and see, see if it's something they'd be willing to run past. Because, I mean, we've had some major expenditures towards the schools, and it's a benefit to living here. I mean, we're trying to draw residents into the town, and a lot of the residents at Westmont have come here specifically for the idea that it's a town with a really good school system, and it's a type of place where you want to let your kids grow up and go to school here. If it's something that we can discuss with the city council and possibly not this year, but somewhere down the few years in the future, get that ball rolling, I think that would be an enormous benefit to to the board, at least, not having to constantly figure out where to have the revenue come from.
I agree.
Cool. Thanks.
Hi, Melissa Cruz, 335 Columbia Boulevard. I was watching, so I'm sorry if I missed this, and I'm really excited about all the things we're doing. I was just wondering that if there's anything in the budget catered to our gifted and talented students.
I didn't say that again.
I saw a lot in our budget, and I'm excited for all that's happening. I saw a lot of things that are helping our special needs students. I was wondering if there's anything for our gifted and talented students.
With the addition of staff, Mrs. Cruz, we're hoping to have more availability. As you're aware, we have teachers doing multiple tasks right now. So we're hoping to have, with the additional staffing, to have more sections available for people to perhaps apply more expertise to gifted and talented. We have more hands on deck to do that and offer more things to our students. Right now, last year with the loss of staff and having people take on multiple roles, there was a limit to how much they could do. But as the budget gets approved and we start to project next year's staffing, I'm hopeful to have more flexibility and staffing to allow for more opportunities to exist for all students, but as to your question, gifted and talented students.
So we're not planning on hiring any additional staff, that we're just going to utilize the staff we have because they're going to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing now. So will there somebody be servicing intermediate school? Because right now, I know Ms. Campagna is servicing Doyle, but it's very limited and we're going to have increase in classroom sizes. Is there a reason why we didn't put that as a budget line to maybe hire a teacher to assist her?
Because we believe we'll be able to cover it with the staffing that we're proposing in the budget.
Okay, and then I just have a question that I just want to be able to understand a little better. You said that some money was coming from prior referendums. I believe, what exactly do you mean by that?
The prior referendum.
The debt service.
Oh, okay, debt service.
So
A portion of the property taxes that are paid are designated toward debt service, bond payments.
Okay.
There was a referendum, I think it was 2014.
Yeah, years and years ago.
Yeah, 2014. Not all the money was spent in that referendum. And so that money has been essentially just collecting interest. And so the decision was made to take a portion, to take that money and use that to pay down the debt service,
Okay.
$600,000 worth. And as a result of doing that, that means that $600,000 less that has to come from the property taxpayer this year.
Okay, so that's what I thought it meant. So my question to the board would be, if we had this money sitting in reserves that we didn't use and we were lacking in certain areas, why didn't we use it?
That money, that referendum is dedicated to a particular set of
Line
uses.
items?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually something we discussed, and it was elaborated upon us that we could only spend it in this area, this area, and this area. So it would not be something, if you're looking for like staffing, it would not have been able to been spent there.
But now we're able to take it and use it where we necessarily want to, or you're still using it in those line items?
No. Essentially, it can be used for, I don't, what was it originally for?
If there were any projects, when we conducted that referendum, if I recall at the time, windows, air conditioning, doors,
Capital
et cetera.
improvements?
The first thing you use the money for is if anything wasn't completed, if anything needed to be fixed up, if something wasn't installed the right way, the first thing you do is use that money to do that. You cannot simply just, I wish you could, but you could not simply just take that money and allocate it to any line. You're
Right.
limited as to what you can do. And it was our accountant that advised that one way to lessen the load on the taxpayer, and that money's been there for a while, was to allocate it towards the payment for this year's upcoming debt service. But it's not something that we could put to staffing, to personnel, to supplies, to anything. It's restricted where it can go.
Okay, so the debt service that we have is amongst a variety of different things. Is that correct? Like debt is debt, or is it something different?
Debt is paying off the bonds from the past.
Okay,
And at the end of this year, Mr. Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, that bond will be finished.
One of the bonds will be finished, yes. There are two bonds. One of them will be completely paid off at some point during this school year, upcoming school year.
okay, so with this proposed budget, and if everything goes well and we get it approved, we will not obviously need a referendum. So we figured out a way to do it without a referendum,
For the upcoming year, yes.
but then maybe not moving forward. So we have next school year covered, but we don't know what the after that looks like.
One thing that this budget does with the waiver for health benefits and enrollment, plus the increase in the tax levy from the extra expenditure, that now creates a new floor of our tax base. So as of right now, 2% next year is 2% of the total tax levy, which is almost a $3 million increase from the
Right.
prior year. So one of the things that was still under consideration is to possibly bring back a referendum or roll out a referendum next year. We're also trying to find out if this most recent action by the state and the extra expenditure is a one-time deal or something that's going to repeat again next year.
So we don't, that's an unknown though, correct? We don't
That is
know.
correct. That is
So
correct.
this just covers us for next school year, and then we'll have to figure out or do a referendum or go back to the drawing board.
Or apply again.
I would say that
No,
other.
I would hope it's covered. I understand that.
Well, yeah,
but-
other factors coming into it is we're starting the year with our pre-K being tuition-based. If we get the grant for pre-K, that's going to help us in a variety of areas as well, and perhaps leave us more money to roll over into the next year, whereas this year it's $500,000. Perhaps next year with that extra money, it becomes more.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on the budget? Oh, no. All right. Any questions posted? All right.
I just want to say, I know that it's important that we know how many households in town have students within the district, but it's also very important for everyone that doesn't have students in the district to realize that it still affects our homes, whether you
Oh,
have
yeah.
a student in district or not, depending on how good the schools are and what we're funding and how we're moving forward and how we're doing all that. So it does still become important to the people that don't have kids in the school.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I will close the hearing of citizens on the resolution only. Trustees, which includes Munaki, looking for your support on Finance 1 and only tonight. Can I get a first? Mr. Garvin, second. Mrs. Milano, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Garvin,
Yes.
Mrs. Milano,
Yes.
Mr. Biamonte,
Yes.
Mr. Nieves.
Yes. Trustees, thank you for that approval. It is always an important one that we have. Before I open it up to the hearing of citizens on anything they'd like to talk about, anything for unfinished business, communications, new business. All right, I will open it up to the hearing of citizens on whatever they'd like to talk about. No? Anything posted? No. All right, hearing none, seeing none out there. Close the hearing of citizens. Trustees, motion to adjourn. Mr. Fallon, second. Mr. Biamonte, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you.